My son sold my late wife's bakery for $2 million before her body was even cold. He told the buyer he could move in on Monday. But on Monday morning, when the new owner showed up with a moving truck, my attorney was standing in the doorway holding a document that made everyone in the room go very, very quiet. My son's wife fainted. My son tried to run, and the buyer called his own lawyer, screaming about fraud. Before I tell you how my own flesh and blood tried to erase 40 years of my life in a single weekend, and how my dead wife reached out from beyond the grave to stop him, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments if you have ever been betrayed by someone you would have died for. My wife Lorraine passed on a Wednesday in November. Pancreatic cancer. She fought it for 14 months. And she fought it the way she did everything else in her life, with her jaw set and her apron on. She ran that bakery on Maple Street in Savannah, Georgia, for 38 years, Lorraine's Kitchen. You could smell the cinnamon rolls from 2 blocks away. She baked through chemo. She baked through radiation. She baked until her hands shook too badly to hold the piping bag. And even then she sat on a stool in the corner and told her assistant exactly how much vanilla to add because Lorraine trusted nobody's palate but her own. I was 67 years old when I buried her. Retired firefighter. 31 years with the Savannah Fire Department. Bad knees. A pin in my left hip from a roof collapse in '04. And a heart that now had a hole in it the size of the Atlantic Ocean. We had one child. Our son, Derek. 41 years old. Married to a woman named Amber, who had never worked a day in her life but had opinions about everything, especially money. The funeral was on a Friday. It rained. Lorraine would have hated that. She always said rain made her pie crusts soggy and her customers grumpy. I stood at the graveside holding an umbrella that was too small, letting the water soak into the shoulder of my suit because I didn't care anymore. The priest was reading scripture. I was trying to remember the sound of Lorraine's laugh. That deep, rolling sound she made when something truly surprised her. I was losing it already, 3 days after her death, and that terrified me. Derek stood to my left. He wasn't crying. He was wearing sunglasses, which I thought was strange because it was overcast and raining. Amber stood next to him in a black dress that was too tight and too short for a funeral. She was chewing gum. I could hear it, the soft, wet snap of it between her teeth, while the priest talked about eternal rest. She was scrolling through her phone with one hand, holding a tiny black umbrella with the other, not sharing it with Derek, not sharing it with me. I heard Derek lean over to Amber. "I have good ears. Firefighters learn to listen through noise," he whispered. "Did you call the realtor yet?" Amber whispered back. "He's coming to the bakery tomorrow morning. He said we could list it by Monday if we price it right." My wife's casket hadn't touched the bottom of the grave yet, and they were already selling her life's work. After the burial, we drove back to the house. My house. A yellow craftsman bungalow on a quiet street with a magnolia tree in the front yard that Lorraine and I had planted the year Derek was born. I expected to sit in the living room with my son and grieve together. I expected him to pour me a drink and tell me stories about his mother. I expected decency. Instead, when I walked through the front door, I found boxes. Moving boxes stacked in the hallway. My books were already packed. My recliner, the leather one Lorraine had given me for my 60th birthday, had been moved to the garage. In its place was a new white sofa still wrapped in plastic. Amber was standing in the kitchen, reflecting 2 men I had never seen before. They were measuring the walls. "What is this?" I asked. Derek came up behind me. He put his hand on my shoulder. Not a comforting hand, a steering hand. The kind you use to guide someone toward the exit. "Dad, we need to talk." He sat me down at the kitchen table. My kitchen table. The one Lorraine and I had bought at an estate sale in 1989. He sat across from me. Amber stood behind him, arms crossed, chewing that gum. "Dad," Derek said, "Amber and I have been talking, and we think it's time for a change. This house is too big for one person. The bakery is losing money. Mom was keeping it alive on reputation alone, but the numbers don't lie. And frankly, Dad, you're not in great shape. Your knees, your hip. You can't maintain a property like this." I stared at him. "This is my home, Derek." "It was your home," Amber corrected. She said it the way you correct a child who calls a triangle a square. Lorraine left everything in the family trust. Derek is the executor. We've already had it appraised. Appraised? I said. Lorraine died 3 days ago. We had it done last month, Derek said. He had the decency to look down at the table when he said it. When it was clear she wasn't going to make it, we wanted to be prepared. Last month, while Lorraine was still alive, still fighting, still baking her lemon bars with shaking hands, they were measuring the square footage of her kitchen and calling realtors. The betrayal hit me like a flashover. That moment in a burning building when the air itself ignites. The house is worth about $800,000, Derek continued. The bakery, with the building and the brand name and the equipment, about $2. $2 million. There's also about $400,000 in savings in the life insurance. We're going to sell everything, consolidate the assets, and invest. Amber's brother knows a guy in Atlanta who does commercial real estate. We can double the money in 2 years. And where do I live? I asked. Derek slid a brochure across the table. I looked at it. Magnolia Pines Assisted Living. It had a photo of elderly people sitting in a beige room watching television. The monthly rate was $1,800 for a shared room. It's nice, Amber said. They have bingo. I don't play bingo, I said. You'll learn, she said. It's an adjustment. But you'll be around people your age. You won't be rattling around in this big house alone. It's depressing. I looked at Derek. I looked at the boy I had coached in Little League. The boy I had taught to drive. The boy I had put through college, paying every cent because Lorraine insisted he graduate debt-free. I looked for my son in his face, but all I saw was a stranger doing arithmetic. You can't sell Lorraine's bakery, I said. That bakery is her legacy. Legacy doesn't pay property taxes, Dad, Derek said. He stood up. We've already accepted an offer. $2 million flat. The buyer wants to turn it into a cocktail bar. They're keeping the brick oven as a decorative feature. It's a done deal. We close on Monday. Monday, I repeated. That's 3 days from now. And we need you out of the house by Sunday night. The stagers are coming Monday morning. We're listing this place by Wednesday. Amber reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She tossed it onto the table. It slid across the wood and stopped in front of me. I opened it. Inside was $300 in cash. That should cover the first week at Magnolia Pines, Amber said. They do a trial period. If you like it, we'll set up a monthly payment from the proceeds. If you don't like it, well, there are cheaper places in Macon. Macon, 2 hours away from my home, from my wife's grave, from the bakery she had built with her bare hands. Get out of my house, I said. Derek shook his head. It's not your house anymore, Dad. Moms will put everything in the trust, and I'm the trustee. I have power of attorney. I have the death certificate. It's done. I stood up. My bad knees screamed. I walked to the front door. My suitcases were on the porch. 2 of them, already packed. Someone had gone through my closet while I was at the funeral and packed my clothes like I was luggage being checked at the airport. I picked up the bags. I walked down the steps. Behind me, I heard Amber's voice, bright and casual. Don't forget to cancel the newspaper, Derek. We're not paying for his subscriptions. I walked 6 blocks in the rain to a bus stop. I sat on the bench and waited. I was soaked. My hip ached. A woman walking her dog looked at me with pity. I didn't want pity. I wanted a phone that worked, because mine was almost dead, and I needed to make one call. I got on the bus and rode it to a motel on the edge of town, the Palmetto Inn, $29 a night. The room smelled like mildew and the television only got 4 channels. I plugged in my phone and waited for it to charge. Then I called Mabel Price. Mabel was not just Lorraine's attorney. She was Lorraine's best friend from church. They had sung in the choir together for 20 years. Mabel was 70 years old, sharp as a tack, and meaner than a cottonmouth when provoked. She picked up on the first ring. Walter, she said, I've been waiting for your call. Mabel, they kicked me out. Derek sold the bakery. He's selling the house. He put my clothes on the porch. There was silence on the line. Then Mabel spoke, and her voice was made of cold iron. Did he now? And did he bother to check the filing date on the trust amendment? What amendment? Mabel laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. Walter, your wife came to see me in September. She drove herself, even though she could barely walk. She sat in my office for 2 hours. She told me everything. She told me about Derek and Amber calling realtors. She told me about the appraiser who came while you were at your physical therapy. She told me about the $60,000 Derek took from the joint savings account to invest in Amber's brother's pyramid scheme. 60,000? I said. I didn't know about that. She found the transfer on the bank statement. She didn't tell you because she didn't want you to have a heart attack on top of everything else. But she told me. And then she told me exactly what she wanted to do about it. Mabel paused. I could hear paper rustling. Lorraine amended the trust, Walter. Quietly. Legally. With 2 witnesses and a notary. She removed Derek as trustee and appointed me. She added a caretaker clause that requires you to live in the family home for the rest of your life as a condition of any distributions to Derek. And she added a forfeiture clause. A forfeiture clause, I repeated. If Derek removes you from the home, sells any property without your written consent, or subjects you to financial or emotional abuse, he loses everything. Every penny. The house, the bakery, the savings, the insurance. All of it gets donated to the Savannah Firefighters Benevolent Fund. I sat on the edge of the motel bed. I held the phone with both hands because they were shaking. She did that? She did that because she loved you, Walter. She knew what was coming. She saw those 2 circling like buzzards while she was still breathing. She wanted to make sure that when she was gone, you would be protected. But Derek has a copy of the old trust, I said. He thinks he's the trustee. He has a copy of a document that was superseded 2 months ago. The amendment is filed with the county. It's recorded. It's ironclad. Derek is operating on a map that doesn't match the territory. I felt something shift inside me. The grief didn't disappear. It never would. But something harder moved in beside it. Something with teeth. What do we do? I asked. We let them hang themselves, Mabel said. They've already sold the bakery without authority. That's fraud. They've evicted you, which triggers the forfeiture clause. And if I know Derek and Amber, they're spending money right now that doesn't belong to them. Let them spend. Let them dig. The deeper the hole, the harder the fall. When? Monday morning. They think they're closing on the bakery sale. I'll be there. The buyer will be there. And so will you. Wear a nice suit. You're going to enjoy this. I hung up the phone. I lay back on the lumpy bed and stared at the water stains on the ceiling. For the first time in 3 days, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just been handed a fire axe and pointed toward a door that needed breaking down. I stayed in that motel for 2 days. I ate gas station sandwiches and drank weak coffee. I watched the Weather Channel because it was the only station that came in clearly, and I waited. Mabel sent me updates. She had a friend who lived across the street from the bakery. On Saturday morning, a contractor's truck pulled up and men started tearing out the display cases Lorraine had custom-built 20 years ago. They ripped out the countertops she had chosen, white marble with a blue vein running through it that reminded her of the coast. They disconnected the brick oven that Lorraine's father had helped us install in 1987, the oven that had baked 1 million loaves of bread. On Saturday afternoon, Derek posted a photo on social media. He was sitting in a brand new pickup truck, a massive black thing with chrome everywhere. The caption said, "New chapter, new wheels. Thanks, Mom." He tagged Amber, who had posted her own photo, a shopping haul from the designer outlet in Hilton Head. Bags and bags of clothes. She wrote, "Retail therapy hits different when the trust fund drops." They had already accessed the savings. They had already spent money, and they had no idea that every dollar they spent was a nail in their own coffin. Sunday night, my phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Dad, hope you're settling in at Magnolia Pines. Amber found your fishing rods in the garage. We're donating them. You won't need them where you are. Also, we're painting the house. Amber wants gray. The yellow is dated. My fishing rods, the ones my father had given me. The ones I had used to teach Derek to fish on the Ogeechee River when he was 8 years old. He was throwing them away like scrap metal." I didn't reply. I turned off my phone. I set my alarm for 6 in the morning. I hung my suit on the bathroom door and checked the buttons. I polished my shoes with a hand towel. I was ready. Monday morning. I took a cab to Mabel's office on Bull Street. She was already there, dressed in a navy suit, her reading glasses perched on her nose, a stack of documents on her desk thick enough to stop a bullet. She looked at me and nodded. You look good, Walter. I look angry, I said. Even better. Let's go. We drove to the bakery. The sign was still up. Lorraine's Kitchen, painted in her handwriting, green letters on a white board. But the windows were papered over, and a contractor's dumpster sat in the parking lot, filled with debris from the interior demolition. There were 3 cars in the lot. Derek's new truck, Amber's white SUV, and a silver BMW that belonged to the buyer. A man named Graham, who wanted to turn my wife's bakery into a place that served $15 cocktails. We walked in. The front room was gutted. The display cases were gone. The checkerboard tile floor was covered in dust and plaster. The smell of cinnamon was gone, replaced by drywall compound and sawdust. It hurt to see it. It hurt like walking into a burning building where someone you love is trapped. Derek was standing at a folding table with Graham and Graham's attorney. They were reviewing paperwork. Amber was leaning against the wall, scrolling her phone, looking bored. She was wearing new boots that probably cost more than my motel room for the month. Derek looked up when I walked in. His face went through 3 emotions in 2 seconds. Surprise, annoyance, then dismissal. Dad? What are you doing here? This is a private closing. I was invited, I said. Invited by who? By me, Mabel said, stepping through the door behind me. She was carrying a red folder. Good morning, Derek. Good morning, Amber. Good morning, Mr. Graham. I'm Mabel Price. I represent the Lorraine Chen Family Trust. Derek's face tightened. Mabel, your mom's church friend. You're not involved in this. I'm the trustee. I have the documents. You have a document, Mabel corrected. She walked to the folding table and placed her red folder down with a deliberate thud. You have a copy of a trust instrument dated 3 years ago. That instrument was amended on September 14th of this year. The amendment was filed with Chatham County and notarized by Judge Helen Park. She opened the folder. She slid a single page toward Derek. This is the filing receipt. Derek picked it up. He read it. He read it again. I watched the color drain from his face the way water drains from a bathtub, slow at first, then all at once. This can't be right, he said. It is right, Mabel said. Your mother removed you as trustee 6 weeks before she died. She appointed me. She also added 2 clauses that are directly relevant to what has happened in this room over the past 72 hours. Graham, the buyer, shifted in his seat. What's going on? He asked his attorney. The attorney was already reading the document, and his expression was not encouraging. Mabel didn't sit down. She stood at the head of the table and spoke with the calm authority of a woman who had been preparing for this moment for 2 months. Clause 5. The caretaker provision. All distributions from the trust are contingent on Walter Chen maintaining primary residence in the family home at 412 Maple Street. Walter is granted a life estate. The property cannot be sold, transferred, or encumbered without his written consent. Derek, did you obtain your father's written consent to sell this bakery? Derek's mouth opened. Nothing came out. I'll take that as a no, Mabel said, which means the sales contract you signed with Mr. Graham is void. You had no authority to sell this property. You represented yourself as the trustee when you were not. That is fraud. Graham stood up. Fraud? He looked at Derek. You told me this was a clean deal. You told me you had full authority. I did have authority, Derek stammered. I had the trust document. I didn't know she changed it. Ignorance is not a defense, Mabel said, especially when the amendment is a matter of public record. Graham's attorney was already packing his briefcase. We're withdrawing from this transaction, he said, and we'll be seeking restitution for the deposit and the demolition costs we've already incurred. That's $180,000, Graham said, his face red. I paid you $180,000 as a deposit, Derek. I want it back today. Derek looked like a man standing on a bridge watching the water rise. I don't have it, he whispered. We already spent some of it. Some? Graham shouted. How much is some? Derek looked at Amber. Amber looked at her new boots. All of it, Amber said quietly. It was the first time I had ever heard her sound small. Graham slammed his palm on the table. I'll see you in court. He grabbed his coat and walked out. His attorney followed. The door banged shut behind them. The room was silent. Just me, Mabel, Derek, and Amber, and the ghosts of 1,000 loaves of bread that would never be baked in this building again. There's more, Mabel said. She turned to the second page. Clause 9, the forfeiture provision. If the beneficiary removes the grantor's spouse from the family residence or engages in financial exploitation of the trust assets, all beneficial interest is permanently terminated. Derek stared at her. Terminated. You packed your father's bags while he was at his wife's funeral, Derek. You put him on the street with $300. You sold a property you didn't own. You spent trust money on a truck and shopping sprees. Every single one of those actions triggers forfeiture. So what happens to the money? Amber asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. The remainder of the trust, approximately $3, $2 million, including the house, the bakery property, the savings, and the insurance, will be donated to the Savannah Firefighters Benevolent Fund. Your husband's father spent 31 years running into burning buildings to save strangers. Lorraine wanted to make sure those men and women were taken care of, since her own family clearly wouldn't take care of him. Amber turned to Derek. The partnership dissolved in real time. You told me we were set, she hissed. You told me the trust was ironclad. You told me your mother was too sick to change anything. She was sick, Derek said. She could barely walk. How did she even get to a lawyer? She drove herself, I said. It was the first time I had spoken since we sat down. She drove herself in the rain with an IV bruise on her arm because she loved me more than she feared dying. She used the last of her strength to protect me from you. Derek looked at me. I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not remorse. Fear. Dad, come on. We can work this out. You can move back in. We'll fix the bakery. We'll put everything back. You can't put back a brick oven that's in a dumpster, Derek. You can't unspend $180,000 that belongs to a man who is now going to sue you. You can't undo what you did. Dad, please, he said. His voice cracked. I'm your son. I looked at him for a long time. I looked at the boy who used to fall asleep on my chest while I watched football. The boy who cried when his goldfish died and insisted we have a funeral in the backyard. I looked for that boy, but he was buried under layers of greed and entitlement that I had helped build by never saying no. You were my son on Friday when you put my suitcases on the porch, I said. You were my son when you told me to go live in a facility with shared bathrooms and bingo nights. You were my son when you sold your mother's bakery to a man who wanted to turn it into a bar. Being my son didn't stop you then. It doesn't save you now. Amber stood up. She grabbed her purse. She looked at Derek with an expression I recognized. It was the look of a woman doing calculations and not liking the result. I'm calling my brother, she said. I need a ride. Where are you going? Derek asked. Away from you. I married a man who told me he was going to inherit millions. Instead, I married a man who is about to be sued for fraud and has nothing. This isn't what I signed up for. She walked out without looking back. She didn't look at me either. I was invisible to her, just as I had always been. Just the old man in the recliner, who got in the way of her renovation plans. Derek sat alone at the folding table. He put his head in his hands. I could see his shoulders shaking, but I didn't know if he was crying or just trembling from the shock. It didn't matter. Mabel gathered her documents. She touched my arm. Walter, let's go home. We walked out of the bakery into the morning sunlight. The air smelled of magnolia and river water. Savannah in November, still warm enough to sit on a porch with a glass of sweet tea. Mabel drove me back to the house. My house. The yellow bungalow with the magnolia tree. The painters hadn't started yet. The yellow paint was still there, warm and bright. The color Lorraine had chosen because she said it looked like sunshine even on cloudy days. I walked up the front steps. I unlocked the door with my key. The house was a mess, boxes everywhere. My recliner was still in the garage. The new white sofa sat in the living room like an intruder, but the bones of the place were the same. The wood floors Lorraine and I had refinished together. The kitchen where she tested recipes at midnight. The bedroom where we had spent 10,000 nights side by side. I walked to the kitchen. Lorraine's recipe box was still on the counter. They hadn't packed it. It was too ordinary, too plain. A simple wooden box with index cards inside, each one covered in her handwriting. I opened it. The first card was for her cinnamon rolls. I held it to my nose. It smelled faintly of vanilla. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Derek had told me to leave. I put the recipe card in front of me and read it slowly, hearing Lorraine's voice in every instruction. Don't overwork the dough, Walter. Be gentle. Good things take patience. I spent the rest of the day cleaning. I moved the white sofa to the garage and brought my recliner back inside. I unpacked my books. I hung Lorraine's photo back on the wall above the fireplace, the one from our wedding day where she was laughing so hard her veil was crooked. By evening, the house felt like mine again. Not the same. It would never be the same, but mine. At 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was Derek. He was standing on the porch in the same clothes he had been wearing that morning. His eyes were red. His truck was parked on the street. There was a duffel bag at his feet. I opened the door. "Dad," he said. "Amber left. She took everything from the apartment. She drained the checking account. I have nowhere to go." I leaned against the doorframe. I looked at my son. I thought about what Lorraine would say. She would say that consequences are the only teacher some people understand. She would say that the hardest part of loving someone is letting them fall so they can learn to stand. "There's a motel on Highway 17, I said. "The Palmetto Inn. $29 a night. The television only gets 4 channels, but you'll have a roof. Dad, please." I sat in that motel for 2 days eating gas station sandwiches while you posted photos of your new truck, Derek. I sat there alone, 3 days after burying my wife, because my son decided I was worth less than a fresh coat of gray paint. Derek's face crumpled. "I'm sorry." "I believe you're sorry," I said. "I believe you're sorry that it didn't work out. I believe you're sorry that Amber left and the money is gone and Graham is going to sue you. But I don't believe you're sorry for what you did to me. Not yet. Maybe someday. But not tonight." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the envelope with the $300 he had given me. I held it out to him. "This should cover a week." He stared at the money. He didn't take it. His lip trembled. Then he picked up his duffel bag, turned around, and walked down the steps. He didn't say goodbye. He got in his truck and drove away. I watched his taillights disappear around the corner. I closed the door. I locked it. The deadbolt clicked, heavy and final. I went to the kitchen. I opened the cabinet where Lorraine kept her good china. I took out a single cup. I brewed a pot of her favorite tea, chamomile with honey. I poured it and carried it to the back porch. I sat in the rocking chair and looked out at the garden. Lorraine's garden. The roses needed pruning. The herb bed was overgrown. There was work to do. There was always work to do. But the soil was good, and the roots were deep. And things that are planted with love have a way of coming back no matter how badly they've been neglected. I raised my cup to the empty chair beside me, the one where Lorraine used to sit on warm evenings, reading her mystery novels and humming hymns she only half remembered. "You were right, Lorraine," I said to the quiet air. "You were right about everything, and I should have listened sooner." The crickets answered. The magnolia tree rustled in the breeze. The house stood solid behind me, yellow and warm, a fortress built on 38 years of bread and love and stubbornness. I was 67 years old. I was alone. I had just turned away my only child. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the morning. I would wake up in my own bed. I would make coffee in my own kitchen. I would walk down to the bakery and start figuring out how to rebuild what they had torn apart. Lorraine's name was still on that sign. And as long as I was breathing, it would stay there. They say blood is thicker than water. But I learned that greed is an acid that eats through anything, even the bond between a father and his son. Lorraine knew that. She saw it coming while I was still pretending everything was fine. She spent her last weeks on this earth, not just fighting for her life, but fighting for mine. The greatest thing she ever baked wasn't her cinnamon rolls or her lemon bars. It was a safety net made of legal paper and undying love, and she slid it under me just before the floor gave way. If you're a parent watching this, protect yourself. Love your children, but don't be blind. And if you're a child watching this, call your father, call your mother, not because you want something, but because they won't be there forever. And the silence after they're gone is louder than you can possibly imagine. If you like this story, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, would you have opened that door for Derek, or did he get exactly what he deserved?